All right, welcome back, everybody. We're continuing with our material regarding macromolecules. Let's see where we left off. So, our last video, we were talking about nucleic acids. We mentioned how nucleic acids are pretty unique because, for one, it's not a consumed product or macromolecule, it's something that we strictly can make, synthesize. And we mentioned that there are two types of nucleic acids. Most of us should be comfortable with that. It's DNA and RNA. Um, but there's obviously differences associated with the two. And the last thing we were talking about was this whole purine pyrimidine discussion, as far as purines having two rings, pyrimidines having one. Again, I love my mnemonics. I think mnemonics help a ton. It's just up to you if you think it helps you too. All right, today we're going to get further into proteins. We're making good progress, not too far else as far as the concepts are concerned. So, as far as proteins, there's a unique atom or element that is found in proteins. It wouldn't be a bad idea to know these elements as well. Most of these elements are the same as far as what we found in nucleic acids, as what we were talking about in our last video. But the unique thing with proteins is now we start to see the introduction of sulfur. So, not a bad idea to know that. What is the basic unit of a protein? Well, the basic unit of a protein is simply called an amino acid. Now, that number next to the amino acid is not necessarily too relevant for our class, but there are 20 amino acids that your body synthesizes. If you decide to take higher level courses in college, especially chemistry and biology related, you'll have to eventually learn what those 20 amino acids are and their structure. For now, we're good. The job of a protein. Well, protein provides energy. So we've noticed now that there are three different macromolecules that can provide energy for the body: carbs, lipids, and proteins. Proteins also provide structure. They are necessary for building some of the most complex structures that we have. And one of the most important things that proteins provide for you is repairing body tissue. It's not just like consuming protein because you've worked out and your muscles need it. That's important. But protein also repairs any body tissue whenever it's been damaged. It helps with the repairing process. So that's all super important, no doubt about it. Some proteins go by other names, depending on the complexity and depending on their structure. Some are called hormones, as we're going to learn in the endocrine system. Some are called enzymes, which we're going to talk a little bit about in this unit, and then again in digestive system. And then some are called neurotransmitters, which not sure how many of us have heard of neurotransmitters before, but we'll talk all about that in nervous system. These tiny, tiny chemical structures, or these chemicals that are released to help communicate between neurons. Foods that are high in protein, most of us know this already, right? No, most of us understand like the basics as far as what foods are going to be high in protein. But we have things like meat, eggs, poultry, milk and milk products, so dairy. That's your typical protein sources, especially like animal meats. On the other hand, though, you can get your ample supplies of protein from non-animal products. So nuts, dried beans, peas, lentils. As I've mentioned previously, and we'll talk a little bit more about down the line, it is a balance. It is about finding balance in your body and in your diet. If you can find the proper balance, you could theoretically clean out all meats from your diet and still be perfectly fine. All right, let's go ahead and erase this stuff. Okay, moving on. All right, now proteins are unique in one way particularly. They have complex structure, like as far as how we find proteins under microscopes, pretty powerful microscopes, depends on their how developed they are. The very basic form of a protein. This is a protein here that would be formed after translation. So after the mRNA has been read and you're now pumping out protein. The basic form of protein is called a primary structure. Primary is indicating in this case like number one. It's the first structure. So as far as that's concerned, the primary structure is literally just a chain, as you can see here. Proteins are just being made, all these amino acids, and they're connecting to each other. Simple. When we take it one step further, we now have what's called the secondary structure, aka it's a little bit more complex. The protein has now a little bit more complexity and in turn a little bit more responsibility depending on the protein. Now we're going to observe what's called pleated sheet and alpha helix. Now the pleated sheet also has a name. Let me see if I can attempt to write this down or draw it. It also goes by the beta. It's the closest B I can do without having my normal pen. But the beta pleated sheet, that's supposed to be like a Greek B. But beta pleated sheet is another name for this. It's literally like tinfoil that you've kind of wrapped in on itself. And then another form that the secondary structure for protein can create is called this alpha helix. This looks pretty similar to DNA, right? But instead of a double strand, you just have one strand that's kind of coiling. Okay, so that's our primary and secondary structures. Most proteins get past these stages, especially the primary structure. Next, this is where things start to get a little bit more tricky. The tertiary structure. So tertiary indicates 3. This is the third level. It's upgraded, if you want to think of it that way. A tertiary protein is when the alpha helix and the beta pleated sheet coil up on themselves. And now we start to form some more globular regions. So it starts to get a little bit more complex. It starts to have a little bit more identity. Finally, the most complex proteins our body has, the most intricate proteins our body we typically have them in what's called the quaternary structure. Quaternary structure is indicating the number 4, right? So it's the 4th step. Basically, you get a couple of these tertiary proteins, these tertiary structures. If you bond them together, then they form a more complex protein. For example, a famous example of a quaternary protein would be hemoglobin. We're going to learn all about that in blood and cardiovascular system. Hemoglobin is essential for carrying iron. It is your iron carrying protein in the blood cells, more specifically red blood cells. So we'll get into that as we continue. Here we just see exactly what I was talking about in the last slide, but this is just another picture. It could probably make it easier for you to understand. So here we see, here's a protein chain. It's just a bunch of amino acids. This is a secondary structure, so we can start to form. Another name for that helix is called the alpha helix. That's what alpha looks like in Greek, in case you didn't know. We don't need to worry too much about that. Then we see the tertiary structure when it starts to fold in on itself, and then quaternary is when you have multiple tertiaries fusing together. All right, enzymes. Let's see. Okay. I may want to finish up enzymes on Tuesday in person. I'm obviously going to record another video as well. But this is the last bit of stuff relating to our content for macromolecules. So I could probably finish this up with you guys in person just to make sure that we're comfortable and have no issues there. But with all that said, I think that's a great place for us to stop. If you have any questions, obviously, leave a comment if you need to. But thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you guys on the next one.